Welcome to the Ask Faleskini podcast with a guest. I'm proud to present Lorna Gale, Somatic Sexologist, Sex and Spirit Alchemist of the Female-Led Life. I hope I got that right, Lorna.
Yeah, it's all good. You bet. Thank you, Peter. It's wonderful to be here with you. It's exciting.
Thank you, and I'm so excited to talk about our today's topic. But before we dive in, please let us know a bit about yourself and what do you do?
All right. Thank you. I will do that. I'm here in beautiful British Columbia on the west side of Canada. And I have, I'll share some of the things that I love. I have my beautiful daughters and my grandchildren, love them. And I love laughing. I love laughing and playing games. And so I do that as often as I can. I love being out in nature and not necessarily in ways that I'm seeking anything other than to simply be in the experience of it, no matter where it is. Feet on the ground, listening to the sound of water, listening to the birds. To me, it's just a beautiful connection. And what I do in my work comes from my own experience, really about, and you talked about it, sex and spirit alchemist of the feminine-led life. And sometimes those things about sex and spirit don't always get put together. That's been my journey of how it had been separate. And now how does it come back together? So I really get to, in my role as a somatic sexologist and a poet, a teacher, a speaker, have this opportunity to be support people in unweaving their stories about what has kept them separate from their own bodies, their own sexuality, how that impacts relationships, how it's mirrored in relationships, and that connection to our whole energy, divine essence of who we are. So I get to work with people and virtual and in person through a variety of ways. But again, it really comes back to that helping them to come back home to themselves.
Amazing. So let me start with the title of this episode. Does the lack of sexual energy triggers midlife crisis?
That's a good question. Peter, it's with that question in mind, it comes to mind the idea of does a lack of energy, and sometimes when something is actually missing or it's just not accessible. And I think that sometimes it can play out in different ways, and why does each one happen? So it's a really good question, because I think that in midlife, there can be the whole aspect around sexual energy really seems to often come to a head. And I think, does the lack of it impact or create a midlife crisis? I'm going to unweave that a little bit and look at the word crisis. Sometimes we have a negative connotation about crisis, and it means something's wrong. I've come to look at it as it's actually an opening. It's a portal. Here's this thing. So how do we look at a midlife crisis, and how does sexual energy or the lack of it play out? Again, from my own experience and what shows up in my own my practice, as well as what gets shown to me over and over in life, is that we have been taught to look outside of ourselves, and that's for pleasure, for a partner, for authority, validations, all of those different things, for permission. And when there's that sense of looking outside of ourselves, we don't always recognize or tap into what's right here within us, or what we've been taught. What we've been taught has can be shame or guilt laden, that it creates a bit of disconnection from that sexual energy that is inherently there. When I think about why would we feel disconnected, or why there might be a sense of lack of sexual energy, I think it's kind of curious, because we come from sex, that creative life force energy. And so it's just a natural part of who we are. But when things get shut down, it can seem like it's not there, or there's a lack of it. And I think that oftentimes, Peter, at midlife, it's where somehow there's something in that logical age of things. It's something, let's look at life differently. Or maybe the children are out of the home, that type of a thing. It's sort of that sense of identity gets to be looked at differently. But it's often that there's this sense of something's here. I used to have it and I don't have it anymore. Or I wish I could feel free to access what's there. So does a lack of sexual energy, does that bring on or trigger the midlife crisis? I think that they weave together as the gift, if you will, of awakening into a deeper sense of who we are. So does it trigger it? Sometimes it does, and sometimes it's that very thing that that plays a significant role in an awakening to a different level of way of being.
Amazing. So I'm just keeping notes because there's too much to learn and talk about. So you're talking about two concepts. When we're talking about the lack of sexual energy, one is that the energy is missing, and the second one is it's not accessible. Can you please elaborate a bit more about the difference of these two concepts? When do we lack or miss sexual energy, and when do we lack sexual energy because we are not able to access it?
That's a great question. And I would say in some ways that it actually never is lacking. That it actually, and I'd speak to that sometimes the lack of it, just going to just see here, the lack of it can seem that like when a water faucet is turned off, it seems like there's no water, that there's a lack of it. But again, it's just where did the flow stop? Or where is it where there's idea that, well, I'm not experiencing it right now, so there is a lack of it. Or that sense of, well, I know it's here, it's not accessible because I haven't turned the tap on. And I think that's the same way with our erotic, and I call it erotic energy. And I'll share a quote with you. I'd mentioned Audre Lorde has this beautiful quote, and at what I call my midlife sexual awakening. That's when we talk about this. That's where it happened for me, was in my midlife. I saw things very differently. I'll come back to that. But her quote is, we tend to think of the erotic as a quick, tantalizing sexual arousal. I speak of the erotic as that deepest life force energy that moves us in a fundamental way. Mm-hmm. So, Peter, the way that I look at it is, as long as we are breathing, there is that sexual, erotic life force energy flowing through us. We're breathing. We're here in human experience. It's there.
Okay, that is important. What I would like to know, because you mentioned that a lot of people are not connected to their body, and you mentioned something in a line, if I understood correctly, that connection with the body is the easiest through our sexuality. Can you elaborate a bit about that, if I understood the concept correctly?
Sure. Let's unpack it a little bit, and I love that you're asking questions for the clarity and to reflect how you're hearing it. And I'm going to ask you to ask your question again now. I just want to listen to it at a deeper level.
Okay. Is sexuality the only way to connect to our body?
Not the only way, no. It is a natural way, and it's not the only way. And sometimes, again, the way, excuse me, the way that I look at sexual and erotic, I'm going to use those words a little bit interchangeably. I think that as that quote talks about, it speaks to that life force energy. sexual sometimes can be that aspect of the act of sex, the use of genitals for it, intimacy. There's all kinds of different forms of sexual explorations. Whether it's vanilla, whether it's kink, whether it's with one, with others. There's this different way of exploring with the body, and sexuality can be a way to connect to the body, but there's many people that can actually have sex, be sexual, but they're very disconnected from their bodies.
Mm-hmm.
As I see it, that the real key is that ability to feel emotion, to feel physical sensation, emotional sensation that's happening in the body. And sexuality can be that. As I've experienced it and how I teach it, and what gets shown to me from people who come to me, is that through various different things that happen in life, it might be what they're taught, it might be what their experiences have been. There's so many people, it's a very high percentage of people who have had some level of sexual, not only sexual trauma, I think we all have that in some way, but very much even sexual assault of some type, varying degrees of that. And so when those things happen, there becomes a sense of disconnection from the body. It becomes a sense that it doesn't feel safe to be in the body if things are being done to me that I don't want. And so sometimes things get shut down. It's actually interesting, Peter. In my work, I have a high percentage of people who say the only way I can actually feel free to have sex and to be to have fun and play and not be in this like shutdown is if I'm drunk or under the influence, where it really takes off that edge. And so I really work with people to support, to know that it's okay, it's safe to be in their bodies, and it's okay and it's safe to feel. So to bring them back into a physical sensation, like to be able to give themselves touch, to be able to feel at home, just giving themselves touch on their face. It doesn't even have to be in a sexual way. So sex can be a way to connect to the body. And unfortunately, sex in a distorted way can be a way to disconnect from body. So I think that there's different ways to support people, and breath being one of those ways that can not only help to connect to the body, but it actually can now start to connect into and be more fully in the sexual experience as well.
Okay, so I would like to connect what you just said to the Freud's theory of this sexual desire as the life force, or the something that turns the world around. Would you say that this theory is still let's say relevant in like 150 years later, or are there so many more things that we have to include now in order to understand what's going on in person's psyche and in person's physical body? So the libido is the Freud's concept of libido being outdated? Let me put it like this.
What a great question. I come back to what I'd said earlier, in that sense of, I see that as long as we're breathing, that life force energy, that erotic life force energy is there. And so libido, I think that libido, and keep and touch, if I'm not answering your question, keep asking me again from another angle, that there are people who can go through life and be celibate. And so that's sort of that idea of where we equate sexual activity with sexual or erotic energy. And they don't have to be one and the same. They can be expressions. So this whole idea of the libido and that desire I think that speaks to that desire for life, that quest for to be able to express it in a certain way. And interestingly, there are a lot of people, and I work in the realm of kink, so domination and submission, BDSM, all of those things where a lot of people would say, oh, that's kind of weird, that's kind of bad, that's kind of shameful. Like anything can be supportive of light. Some can be supportive of a range of darkness and hiding the truth of who we are. But it was actually through my experience as a dom and in with working with submissives, that's actually where I had my spiritual I get it, I see that parallel. And so desire, it can actually speak into where we are, what calls us. When we talk about a psyche, it talks into the story that makes each one of us unique. And so to be able to listen, what is it somebody wants? Why do they want that? And can it be done in a healing, whole, consensual way? And I think of a lot of times, and Peter, I'll say this, and then if I'm not answering your question, ask me again. I think of a lot of people who come to me who they have a desire for something, and it's often because they are, one of the reasons is they're naturally curious and they want to explore in a safe way where I can hold a container for them to be who they are. There are other people who come to me, they are desiring something because something non-consensually has been done. They're wanting to experience somehow a place of being held where they can be witnessed in their journey, but when it's done in a consensual way, that it's, or when they can tap into and experience their own bodies, because that's what I do. I guide people back to their own bodies. When they can connect to their own bodies, it helps to move through that disconnection of something that was done non-consensually to them.
Okay, so uh, I, I just got an idea when you explain about the BDSM, and
Mm-hmm.
there are also a lot of fetishes that are really popular these days. Um, are these fetishes just um an, how I say, not an excuse, but a way to try to force life energy, to get to life energy? Because um is there are are fetishes just a way to help people um to come or to experience the life energy?
Mm. Um, and when I'm just going to come back to life energy. A lot of people can talk about it, and I talk about it sort of an energetic thing. A lot of times people also talk about that life force energy in a physical sense, where for a male to ejaculate, it's that life force energy that's being expelled. For women to have their own ejaculation, female body, male body. And so that life force energy, and it gets expelled. And so there's this idea of, oh, wait a minute, we only have so much. So let's hold it in. Let's not ejaculate. Let's hold that, retain that ejaculate, retain that semen. And so there's one level of looking at it that way, where to retain it can actually create a whole different things. And one of the ways that I teach things is how to retain that, how to build that erotic energy, retain it, and how that can be used sometimes for epiphany, sometimes that get used for whole body orgasm, sometimes clarification, sometimes deep peace, sometimes the clearing of trauma, and a down regulating of the nervous system. So all kinds of ways that can happen when that is cultivated and retained. Absolutely. And for some people, the fetishes that you talk about, there is that turn on that happens where, yeah, I love doing this. And then they connect that to that ejaculation or that expression of that life force energy in physical form, if you will. When I think about life force energy as the energetics itself, I look at it from where we have come into this human experience from our wholeness into separation, separate in male bodies, female bodies, separate from humanity and spirituality. All there's us, there's them. So there's that outside, looking outside, that we're separate, and there's this quest to try to come back. We talk about even, sex is two shall become one. That I think that that's in many ways, Peter, this big thing, and it shows up in midlife so much because we've lived life, we've gone, and had all the fun times and this and that, or started a family, and now it's kind of like, wait a minute, who am I? Who am I? And so it's like that life force energy, life itself is saying, come on, connect into that life force energy that is oneness. And so the fetishes oftentimes are ways of, number one, of connecting into that sense of feeling. We often come from, as I talk about it, that women are often taught you're emotional, but don't be sexual. You're a slut if you're too sexual, right? And save yourself for marriage. Be a good girl. Guys are taught, you're sexual. Men will be men, boys will be boys, but don't cry. So at some level, we're all taught shut down some element of us that is very natural, wholesome, and is an expression of that life force energy. So when there's these different explorations, different fetishes that happen, different things that want to, to experience things through a BDSM domination submission piece, I see it is that in the human experience, it's that coming back home. I want to feel what it's like to not be in control. I want to feel what it's like to feel the sting of a whip on my skin. I want to feel, or for a woman to feel unfettered, and I can be who I am sexually. And so I see that each of those fetishes tap into that psyche that's saying, it's time to come home. That recognition at a deep level, where with the Freudian aspect of things, that psyche, those desires are calling us back home to our oneness within.
Amazing. So we talked so much about the theory. So where should midlifers start searching for their sexual energy? Is this trivial as just do something erotic, or find something that you find erotic and practice that? Or where should midlifer address the lack of sexual energy or the life energy, if we go according to the Freud? So what is the first step? How should we get in the body? How should we feel sensations? How much time should we decide to have every week for that? How should we go about it? How should we prepare our life to be able to feel the feelings and to feel our body and get back into our body despite all the traumas that caused us to dissociate from the body?
Oh, Peter, what gold. What a beautiful way to invite our midlifers into that. And I say it starts right here with each individual. To not be looking, okay, what can my partner do for me? What can a boyfriend, girlfriend, lover do for me? It's kind of like, what can I do? Who can I be with and for myself? So first of all, is to start to be our own best lover. And again, sometimes when we think about lovers and the whole thing of that life force energy or sexuality, we think of genitals. Kind of like, let the whole body be an erotic instrument of that life force energy. breath in its simple way is just when you breathe to feel your body move. Just take a moment. The breath is there. It's happening all the time. Start with something as simple. You can do it wherever you're at, in a restaurant. People think, well, what does that have to do with erotic energy? Because we're starting to bring our awareness to the body. We're feeling it move. We're starting to connect to. We're not having a sense of judgment. We're just noticing and feeling what is. And from there can be that awareness of the body that all of a sudden there might be a desire that shows up. It's kind of like, oh, I just want to feel like, I just want to touch on my neck. So there's different ways that we can do that. Oftentimes, Peter, we touch people. If people are in relationship, we touch people, we touch people the way that we want to be touched. So give yourself the touch that you would like. If you would like to have genitals touched, touch your genitals. If you want so slow touch on your face, touch your face. And some people will say, that's weird. Why? Why? Why would we want or expect somebody to do something that we wouldn't do for ourselves? Why? Because we've been taught, look outside. Look outside, depend on somebody else. You're not whole unless you're in a relationship. It's kind of like, that's the lie. I call it out. That's the lie. You are whole and complete within. And as you come back home to yourself, I talk about functional touch. Everybody, we shampoo our hair, we get clothes on. But what happens if we were to shampoo and now just start to all of a sudden just slow down and feel the sensation on your head? And if it feels like, oh my goodness, this feels good, good. Let it feel good. Let yourself connect and feel. Use the senses. Like when you take a bite of an apple, is to or whatever fruit that you love, is to actually feel the textures, feel it in your mouth. Like, oh my goodness! Let every act that you do, the wind on your face, becomes an erotic sexual experience because you are with those senses. And as you start to do that more and more, it takes it outside of this idea of masturbation. Okay, we're going to masturbate, we're going to stroke and touch and whatever until ejaculation happens or until orgasm happens. Ejaculation and orgasm aren't the same thing. They often happen at the same time, so we think they're one and the same. They're not. But to be able to, as if there's that idea of that's what it's all about. And I don't even use, and the word masturbation comes from the word shame. It comes from that whole aspect of shame. There's something wrong, something less than, and how what people are often taught. If you masturbate, you're gonna grow hair on your hands, or you're gonna go blind. So there's so much shaming around this natural thing. When we're born, for the majority of people, if you were to stand there and you put your hands clasped together, where do they join? They go right over to the genitals. Our arms and hands are the perfect length to touch to our genitals, to touch and explore our body. So it's such a natural thing where there is no shame. That's the lie. That's the illusion. That's a part of the story. And so I don't even I use masturbation as a reference point, and I say, good, let's put it in the compost. And now I refer to it as personal erotic practice. Add some pep to your day. And pep might be in that feeling the water on your skin. Let that be a part of your personal erotic practice because you're feeling the body. And this is where sometimes when we talk about as midlife people that are really trying to reconnect to their sexuality, to that life force energy, it's often dependent, like, oh, who else can I do? What can I learn? It's just, you've got it. Your pleasure is in your hands. Whether it's, giving yourself the hug, whether it's touching your genitals, whether it's touching and exploring your anus, whether it's feeling what's it like to touch between your toes. Where are those spots on your body that you love to touch? So really exploring. So that's where I say, start there. Start right at home, right here.
Amazing. So another stereotype that I would like you to confirm or just say that it's not true is that if we're healthy, So indication of health is that we're able to be sexually aroused. Is that correct?
Interesting. That's a complex question, in the sense that a lot of things can keep us from being sexually aroused. Some of that might be going back to trauma. Some of that could be from teaching, where I'll give an example, Peter. I was raised in a Christian home, a very conservative Christian home, and taught to, save myself for marriage, which I did. I was a good girl. But I was so conditioned that that anything other than what happened in my marriage, like that's my body was, I took it to the place where saved myself for marriage. Okay, I did. But it wasn't just a matter of, okay, now I can have sex. It was that somewhere I took it in very deeply. And women confirm this as well. And even men as well, because it creates guilt and confusion when they go against this. But this idea that if I'm supposed to save myself for marriage, anything other than that is wrong, pure, sinful, etc., shameful. But it means that my body isn't mine, my sexuality isn't mine. It belongs to that marriage. It belongs to my husband. So this whole idea of boundaries or even not even there. So, when growing up and all kinds of things were done to me, it's kind of like I don't have any say because my body isn't mine. So different ways we do it. When those things happen along the way, when those messages that we're taught, arousal can't sometimes happen because we're not connected to what is that mechanism that happens, which is our own desire, which is our own ability to connect into what is true for us. A lot of times there can be this sense that with arousal, it might be because of, somebody say, well, I'm not in a relationship, so therefore I can't. And I'm masturbation. I don't do that. So there's this idea that that arousal isn't available because, well, it belongs in a certain container, as opposed to a healthy, natural, nourishing part of the human experience. It also can be the sense that people can think, well, when we get to a certain age, when we get to midlife, things don't work as well. And so arousal doesn't really happen. But often it's because we're not being true to ourselves, and we don't necessarily know how to be true to ourselves because we've been so dependent on how do we please other people, people pleasing sexually, people pleasing in general in life. We don't necessarily know what we want, what turns somebody on that could lead to arousal. And it could also happen, Peter, that when somebody doesn't feel safe in their environment, arousal isn't going to happen. Because arousal, there can be a physical, there can be a physical response, but the emotional response where arousal really happens and connects to and is the fountain of that doesn't happen that way.
Okay, so going back to our midlifers, where should we start? How should we connect to the body? What's the first step? Should we do it alone? Should we get a coach, a mentor? What is the right way to do it?
That's great. So I would say the first thing is to start do the various things of tuning into your own body, touching your body, using your breath, finding out what is it that where are your desires. Start to find out what kind of touch you want by exploring your own body. For some people, I hired a masturbation coach. And then that was again I was 42 at the time, and so that was when I had my first orgasm. So I hired a masturbation coach, and then after that, I started to do different trainings, retreats, workshops to find out who am I as a sexual erotic being. Why am I shut down? I used to think, am I maybe I'm gay? Maybe that's why I'm not doing it. No, I just didn't feel safe, and I didn't believe I had any say over my own body. So start to explore those different ways. Certainly, I'm one of the ones. I'm available if people feel a call to work with me. I will keep bringing you back to yourself find out, where are those things? Is it that you thought you had to have permission to connect to your own body? Is it because you've been taught different things? Where are some traumas? I've worked with, in working with many people who have had sexual trauma from childhood even. We're working through and helping them to feel it's okay to feel. You can feel safe in your body. So start to work at that from those ways. Find out if there's a class that somebody feels you're, looking through something and you feel there's a class, if you feel an inclination to do that, start to do that. But it really starts with ourselves, with each person starts with themselves. Even if you're in a relationship, it starts with your own journey. And sometimes some couples they're each going through that in their own journey. And they sort of, how do they learn together? How do they unlearn together? How do they heal through their own journeys and then in relationship to each other? So I think, Peter, those are some of the ways to do it. I remember for myself when I hired a masturbation coach. I went to different retreats and classes and workshops. I went to the practice that I went to, and this is a really powerful one, is to do a mirror meditation, which is really to go into a PEP, personal erotic practice, masturbation, in front of a mirror and start to see what comes up, start to encounter and that for me, again, that was a big part of my process. That was actually what led to my midlife sexual awakening. I literally met myself in the mirror. It's kind of like, orgasmic? Are you kidding? This is gross. This is disgusting. And the self-loathing that came up, the shame, it even took me to the level of existential shame, the shame that I even existed. And once I could get down to that level, then I could connect to this body. Then I could start to connect and touch my own body, find out, what can my body feel? What touch do I like? And that's where I had my midlife sexual awakening, was when after that 7 days in a row, half an hour looking in the mirror, going through that, staying, the tears running down my face, when I could touch down into that level of shame. And then I had what I call that midlife sexual awakening. It was an instantaneous 180-degree change where I remember saying, this is pure and good and right. It's not dirty and shameful and sinful like I'd been taught. And that's where literally it was like, oh my, it was like a whole new world opened up to me from being so disconnected from my own body, my own sexuality, and getting grossed out at, people kissing. And this is to all of a sudden life was erotic. My daughter showed me, she was visiting one time and she had cut a red cabbage. She showed me, goes, Mom, isn't this beautiful? I said, it looks like genitals. And it was just like life was erotic. That breeze on my face, the bite of the apple. I had an orgasm taking a bite out of an apple because I was so tuned into my body. That level, that shroud of shame had come off. So that's what I invite our people to do, is connect in, taste, feel, smell. All of that is a part of that personal erotic practice, that life force energy that is living and breathing, that can inform your desire, that can support that arousal because now you're connected to yourself. That creativity, that life force energy is creative. If you're creative, don't say, I'll get to that later. No, go and be creative. In fact, I have one of my earlier clients. She came to me at the age of 73, so it's never too late when we talk about midlife crisis. She was actually a world-renowned artist, and she came to me. She said, "This sexuality," she said, "it's just getting annoying. Please help me shut it down." I said, "Okay." So it was just sort of that piece of, coming in and doing some body work to say, to let her release it, just release that connection to it. She just wanted to shut it down. And in the process of this session, She had this awareness. And after she said, shut it down, why would I do that? Please help me to bring it full force to the point where she actually would be doing her personal erotic practice that in her while she was doing her paintings, that life force energy. So anything that is creative, it doesn't matter whether it's painting, whether it's writing, whether it's whatever is creative for somebody, it's, creating a system for, for structure. Like when you talk, Peter, about, your systems and things like that, very organized, create those structures. That's creative. Let yourself be there. Get turned on by creating those systems, by seeing how an equation of math, oh my goodness, I get it. Life is a rub. And when we start to compartmentalize, I'm getting emotional. We compartmentalize sexuality to the bedroom. That's where it belongs. And it doesn't. It's kind of saying, no, it's who we are. We are sexual, erotic beings. Let it show, let it be there. And yeah, there's certain times and ways where we express sexually, where we show, but never shut it down.
Okay, so I have one more question before we wrap this up. Where are the boundaries? So when we are expressing our sexuality, where should we don't want to force someone into that or make them feel unpleasant, or so where are the boundaries? How should we know where the boundaries? Because now sexual harassment has become such a big thing, and how do we know that we are just not expressing ourselves and that we are already harassing someone? I think that's a big topic right now. So what's your take on that?
It sure is a big topic. This whole aspect of boundaries, consent, harassment. And from a personal experience, for one to know their own boundaries, I say that's actually, it can be felt. That's what I teach in the compass of consent is, what does that compass? What does it feel like when you are coming from a place of consent? Because consent feels aligned and congruent. So I take people into that through the program of the compass of consent, helping them to not find it, but to remember it, because it's been there since childhood. It's been there. So how do we come? And that helps people in relationships, in our work environment, to come from that aligned place, that compass within. So the boundary starts not as a protection, but as a place of what is true for each person. And that's a big part of it. And so then any interactions give that opportunity for each person to be in that place of consent. But when we haven't believed or haven't been taught that our boundaries count or matter, or I don't even know where my boundaries are, then that's where it can be very confusing. It can be very guilt-laden. It can be so much shame to it. But when that is clear within the body, it's kind of like, okay, that's the compass from which I move. Certainly in workplaces, there are parameters that are talking about within a context. This is what's appropriate. This is what's here and there. And so I think to be able to honor that, because we talk about not only the boundaries of individuals, but there are boundaries of organizations. A business can have its boundaries. A country has its boundaries. This is how we operate. This is what's true for us. And so to be able to honor those, that's what allows that if any interaction, if there's one that's not in a place of consent, if you will, or alignment, or from that place of inner boundary, then consent isn't happening. It has to be on all. Okay, we agree. And sometimes negotiation happens to find, okay, yeah, we can agree on that. But if one person or one entity is not in alignment, then it's not in a consensual way. And so the boundaries, I think that's where I would say, Peter, is, again, it starts within. It starts within. And it's not a rigid thing. Boundaries can change, right? It's what's appropriate by age, what's appropriate or desired in certain circumstances. It changes. So that's where the thing is, because the compass comes from within. The boundaries are felt from within. Wherever we go, there we can feel it. We know our boundaries, go from there.
Thank you for all these insights. And before we really wrap up, where can our listeners and viewers get in touch with you? What would be the best way to get in touch?
I'm on Facebook, Lorna Gale. I'm on LinkedIn, a little bit inactive on LinkedIn right now, but I'm there. Each place you can send me messages, do it that way to connect. My website right now, it's lornagale.com. It's down right now as it's being rebuilt. Those are some different ways for people to get a little bit of a taste about what I do and to look at some testimonials. I have a page on the Trusted Bodywork site, so trustedbodywork.com. That'll give a sense. And any of those are points that you can message me. And my email is lorna@lornagale.com.
Lorna, thank you very much for all these insights and for sharing your story and stories of your clients. This was an amazing insight, and thank you. Really, I believe we shed a lot of light on what's going on in midlife crisis and what we should pay attention to. Because I believe the sexual energy and the erotic energy is something that we don't put enough stress on, and we just go by like, okay, this will happen or something like that. And we don't see something as worth working for or worth having dedicated time for that. We have dedicated time for everything, for gym, but we don't have time for ourselves to take care of our needs, as you call it, and to feel ourselves.
Yeah.
So thank you again for all the insights, and I'm really grateful for what you did for our listeners.
Thank you so much. It was wonderful to be here, Peter. Thank you. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to shed light, to support our listeners in whatever way, in whatever way I can in their journey home to themselves.
Good.